So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for June 15th, 2022. We'll follow the agenda for the issue that was created in the TSC repo, which was issue number 1242. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? I guess if not, we can jump into the agenda items. I'm just taking that for this week. Okay, the first one is revert the change of the network interfaces family from string to integer. This is number 43054. I think there was some earlier changes, challenges in terms of like tests that weren't passing on some platforms. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or comments on that particular issue. I think, Beth, one comment I seem to remember from you is this is something we probably want to get this reverted sooner than later if we can, right?
Yeah, I think the hope was for it to go into 18.1, but it's just going to be the next release that picks it up, to be honest.
Right. So I think at this point, the only concern I'm kind of know that might be left is that, you know, we've disabled tests on a couple platforms, SmartOS and AIX. You know, I don't like us just necessarily disabling tests, but I'd have to say in this case, because I think we want to, you know, we don't want to revert to come halfway through the life cycle of the release, that it actually is the right thing to do and we should, you know, land this. Don't know if that aligns with what other people are thinking.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are waiting on it, and it's the probably most disruptive change that we've had in Node 18. So probably worth the trade-off, in my opinion.
So I would, you know, I look at it and I say, okay, you know, it now actually passes the test with the two platforms, SmartOS and AIX, disabled for those tests. We'd have to follow up later on afterwards, but does have quite a few approvals. I don't see any objections. So is everybody here comfortable if, like, after the meeting I was to go ahead and land it?
I have no objections. It looks landable to me.
Okay. Okay, so Michael, here to the, okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that after the meeting, and we can move on to the next one. The next one is 43017, git blame ignore revs. I'm opening that up. I don't know if anybody has been following / has thoughts they want to add. Feel free to jump in. I think if nobody has any strong feelings on this, I'd suggest that we wait until Darshan's in the meeting, because I think he's one of the proponents and it would be good that he'd be able to sort of lead that discussion. That makes sense to people. I'll assume silence is sort of agreement with that and everybody's okay to move on to the next one. Okay. The next one I think is actually probably the pull request. Or the issue related 430114. So I think we've already discussed that one. So I will move on. Auto closing stale PRs 42981. Actually, I think I just forgot to remove that from the agenda. We have discussed that, and I think we agreed that we could discuss the final bits of that in a PR to add the GitHub bot, or sorry, the GitHub action to do that. So I removed the agenda tag this time, and I don't think there's anything discussed unless somebody has some thoughts, comments they want to add. I will promote Francisca again. Okay, the next one is build, add dev container configuration. I think the last discussion in there was just that things are ready to go. Tierney just needs to work with somebody to get the last few things over the line. So it basically says currently the only things blocking this from landing outside the failures, which shouldn't be failing, is working with someone to get the Docker auth set up. And then it says the OpenJS Foundation staff have the keys to that org that we need. So the remaining task is just to do the manual work to set things up. So I guess it's just an ask for volunteers to help actually make that, do those final few things. Okay, I'll just maybe leave it at that for now. I think it would be interesting to have those containers. So if I have some time, I might look at doing that. But if anybody else has time, feel free to jump in and volunteer there as well. Moving on to the next issue, rename default branch from master to main. I think the good news is we did that today, thanks to Richard and Stuart who helped worked on the more complex ones, and including the core repo we did today. Finally, we've done that for all of our repos across the organization, and happy to say we're done on that front. Next issue, onboarding Chernobyl as security steward number 1233. Actually, we already have reached consensus in the issue that's okay, and I'm going to start onboarding him this week. So I don't think there's anything to actually discuss. And I did remove on the agenda, but just earlier today. So next one, recertify moderation team number 1231. That one I think actually was closed in that it was closed, but I reopened it because I thought we should at least capture in the issue who is recertified, like we've done in past issues.
In that case, you can copy paste the list from the moderation team, which is in the moderation policy doc, I think, in the admin repo or one of those documents.
Okay, so
yeah, unless what you wanted to do was go back and, well, yeah, let's not actually even talk about possibly going back and having a recertification for people as individuals. We'll do that next year.
Okay, I just wanted to find okay, so in the right, okay, I'm in the
should be in the moderation policy. Yeah, it's at the bottom of the moderation policy.
And that's in the admin repo?
Yeah, here comes a link.
Moderation policy.
There you go.
Okay.
There's a link.
Okay.
And that list is up to date.
Okay, so current members of the active. Okay, so if I take that, copy that, and I put it into the issue. Okay, and I'm now looking at the wrong one because I had the previous one. From discussion in the TSC meeting today, which list is okay. Is that going to? Okay, so I'm going to comment. That did show up. Okay, and I'll close out that issue. Okay. That's good. Okay, the next one, end of life dates of Node.js 16 and OpenSSL 1.1.1 do not align. This is 1.2.2.2.2. I think Richard, you've been
I closed the issue earlier today. So the announcement's been merged. It's there's a banner on Node.js pointing to the announcement. I know a few people have tweeted about it. And I've adjusted the release schedule. So the schedule on the release repo is now up to date with the sort of altered earlier time end of life date. So it's done. We just need to sort of just remind people, I guess, periodically. I guess that's all we can do. Decision's been made and announced, and yeah, all that's left is to make sure people are aware of it.
Yeah, I think that yeah, especially since we harp on like we have a really predictable schedule, so it would be good to make sure that we remind people, well, this is the one exception where we didn't manage to do that. So okay,
maybe in the next release post for Node 16 we could just mention and point to it as well, just so people have more chance of catching it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay, anything? Okay, so that's closed out. Thanks for doing that work, Richard. Any other things you want to mention on that before we move on?
No, not to my knowledge. I think there's a copy of the release table on the website, and I think that will just update the next time the website gets rebuilt. So it may not quite be in sync at the moment. I'm not entirely sure how the website gets built, but there is a table. The table's not in the Git repo, so I've got a feeling at build time it's pulling it out of the release repo and
okay,
updating it. So the next time the website gets rebuilt, which it should happen on a reasonably frequent basis, that it should sort of work itself out in due time.
sounds good. Okay, so then the next issue is revisiting membership expectation 693. I think, Rich, you opened that one.
Yes, and I tagged it for visibility and to sort of, this is like changing the member expectations is not the kind of thing that I want to sort of like slip in under the, only the 3 people who noticed it kind of thing. But basically, there are 3 issues that have come lately in moderation team discussions around member expectations that I would like to resolve by altering the member expectations. The first thing is that there's confusing language, or at least confusing to, if I can do the unwise thing and speak on behalf of the not monolithic moderation team, confusing to the moderation team, in that it says members of our leadership groups must conduct themselves and blah, 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 blah. So there's a must in there. And then it says some general guidelines include, so there's like a must, but then it's like what it is that you're supposed to do is kind of left very vague and squishy. Maybe that's inevitable, but if so, we should probably acknowledge that. The second thing is that people are told to report leadership acting outside of the expectations to the moderation team, which kind of makes sense because if someone on the TSC is the subject of your report, you probably don't want to report it to the TSC. You probably want to report it to somebody else. However, moderation team does not believe that member expectations, especially in the format in which it is now, really is what moderation team is supposed to be doing. Like, moderation team considers itself responsible for code of conduct enforcement and isn't really that excited about having other things bolted onto that. So there's that. And then lastly, it says to report people to the moderation team, but it's not really clear what the expected sanctions for violations of these member expectations would be. And so like an obvious one might be removal from your leadership position, but is moderation team even empowered to do that? That's really unclear. So, I don't know what the solution is. Like, one solution is to get rid of the member expectations, but that sends a really bad signal and is really terrible in terms of optics, obviously. So hopefully you get where I'm going. These are, but these are issues that basically if I could just like summarize it as like one thing that's like the too long didn't read, it's that moderation team does not want to enforce these and does not believe that it is their responsibility to enforce these. To the extent that they overlap with the code of conduct, their moderation team's responsibility to enforce. So, you know, we're not excited about them, to be honest. And I'll stop talking because I see that Richard has his hand up and probably has something important to say.
Well, important. I can get behind the moderation team not being the ones holding the leadership team to these expectations, but I feel that it is important that somebody, I don't know who, that isn't the leadership, is able to hold us. You know, if we're going to keep the expectations, then there has to be some avenue that someone, some clear avenue that a sort of something could be reported in, and you know, the sort of process mapped out as to how that would how you would report such an event if you know if an event should occur. Hopefully it won't ever do that, but it does feel that that is something that, you know, I don't think it's good for the project if people elected to the leadership roles are, you know, that there is nothing holding them to account for the position that they end up in.
Rich, you have your hand up again?
So I just left a comment in the issue itself saying perhaps someone can report issues to the TSC, but also be told that they can also report, just as with the moderation team, they're told that they can also report it to any individual moderation team member. Perhaps they can report it to the TSC or any individual TSC member so that they don't have to report TSC member violations to the entire TSC. And perhaps TSC can be responsible for enforcing this themselves. And of course, it would be expected that obviously, if, you know, TSC member X is the subject of the report, that they would not be involved in adjudicating. I will say that these member expectations have been in place for years, and we have to the best of my knowledge, I mean, like, I think they've been in place for, I haven't looked, but I'm going to guess 5 or 6 years. Certainly 4 years. And I'm gonna guess that my recollection is that in all those years we've had exactly one time where someone has said, I believe that someone may have violated these.
Well, these were 2000. This is 2017. And
so about 5 years.
Yeah.
And so assuming that pace keeps up, which it may or may not, of course, you know, we should expect another report sometime in the next 5 years. So it's not like a large volume of these things. Obviously, I would expect us to almost never get reports.
Yeah, I mean, having written, sorry, go ahead.
I would also hope though that, you know, we have written down how to do that report before, you know, way in advance of someone poking their head up and saying, I want to report, but how do I do that? or disagreeing with, you know,
what it says right now is it says to treat it like, to use the moderation policy and effectively treat it like a code of conduct violation.
Right. So, you know, that is the currently documented thing. So if the moderation team, as you, I think what you're saying is the moderation team doesn't feel comfortable with that responsibility, or doesn't feel that it has the power to do anything with reports. It feels that that's, you know, if there are concerns over it, we should try and get those concerns sorted way ahead of it actually becoming an issue. You know, we were trying to figure it out at the same time that something has been reported. I mean, like you, I'm hoping it never does get reported, but I don't want to be in a situation where something is reported and it's unclear what should be done with it. Because we, you know, it would make a stressful situation much more stressful if there aren't at least some sort of guidelines as to what is expected to happen and who at which, you know, who ultimately has what responsibilities in that situation, like, you know, who gets reported to, and then what happens to that report. you know.
Okay, so I've also added a comment that says that in TSC meeting today, it was pointed out, I didn't mention you by name, Richard, I probably should have, sorry. It was pointed out that whoever gets the reports should also have clear processes in place to handle them. Unless somebody has like burning thoughts on this, I actually don't know that this is the place to discuss it, because we'll just have to repeat it for everybody else at some point. We should probably have the discussion in the issue tracker. I just wanted to get it in people's faces by putting it on the agenda. But don't let me stop a burning comment if you have one, Richard.
Yeah, I would like to just add a few thoughts, but I'm happy to wait till other people finish theirs.
My only other question is it something that ultimately, whatever process we've got, ultimately there's some sort of way up to the OpenJS Foundation as a sort of, you know, you keep going up layers and eventually you end up there? I mean, is there anything that in the OpenJS Foundation in terms of governance of the projects underneath the foundation? In terms of, for example, in terms of, for example, if there is some concern over the leadership of a project.
Right. I think that, like, I think in that sense, it's, you know, if it's not a moderation offense, I don't know that it, you know, escalates up to the OpenJS Foundation, or even, to be honest, in the case of a moderation, we have not delegated from the project to the OpenJS Foundation. It's delegated to the moderation team. We could ask the foundation for help.
I don't know that it doesn't escalate up to them though. Like if we aren't, I mean, if we decide that we want to get rid of our code of conduct and not have one, I think the foundation escalating that to the foundation, and the foundation saying, no, all projects in the foundation have to have a code of conduct. I mean, I think that's legitimate.
That's the one example where I agree, because the one requirement that the foundation currently places on projects is that you must have a code of conduct and a process for enforcing it.
So let's
again, I mean, that's a separate, that's totally separate. The comments I wanted to add were, there was lots of context in this when it was created, especially the specific wording. And so it probably is good to update it. The other key thing I want to say is, I don't think you have to have here are some expectations, here's a disciplinary process if you don't follow them. I don't think you have to have those two bits. I know the moderation one is very much here's things that you do, you step over this line, we sanction you, right? I think in this case, it definitely has value to say, as you come onto this team, here are some expectations we've set each other. But I don't think what that means is that, you know, says be the model of, you know, accountability and leadership. If somebody for some reason, you know, just doesn't come across as a leader, but doesn't, you know, it's, you know, these aren't necessarily things which are like, oh, you didn't do that, I'm going to report you for that, right? They're a set of things that as a whole, you know, we expect people to live up to. But I don't think it should be like, yeah, just checkboxy, did you do this? Oh, well, now you're in trouble kind of thing. And I don't know quite how to write to get the right balance, but I think that's an important aspect of these. I see Miles has something to add.
Yeah, go ahead, Miles. I just want to remind everyone that anything you say here probably has to be repeated in the issue tracker. So go for it, Miles.
Yeah, I just, you know, if we're talking about the membership expectations, I think that I like the idea of framing it as the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, right? Like, and what I mean by that is like, hey, the words that we put down there are totally malleable. Like, I'm personally not committed to any of the specific language. What I want to make sure would not be lost if we do edit or change things is the original intent of when we wrote it, which was, if you're going to be in leadership, there's expectations above and beyond that of a collaborator, in the same way that a collaborator should have expectations that are above and beyond that as someone who's just showing up to the issue tracker. You know, these roles that have increased responsibility, you know, like also have an increased scope of accountability. And so like, I don't really feel like an off-the-shelf code of conduct captures that kind of subtlety of tiers of responsibility. And so to me, that would just be the one important thing to keep captured.
I hate to keep acting like I'm trying to stop this conversation from happening here and now, but I would like to propose that we table this because I want to leave a lot of time for the private segment.
Yep, I agreed. Anybody?
Although I do want to check in with all the people that have never said anything in this meeting so far in the first half hour to see if they have anything they want to say on this or any other topic that's come up today. I'm looking at you, Tobias. You unmuted long enough for it to probably said you had nothing to say. Colin?
Nope.
Bethany?
Nope.
Nikita? Franzi? Oh, she said she had to step away. All right, I just love making the meeting awkward for at least 30 seconds every time. Thank you for putting up with my awkwardness. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, so at this point, I think I will propose we skip the strategic initiatives this time because we do have some private business. So unless there's like a particular update somebody wants to give on that front, let's do that.
Seconded on skipping strategic initiatives, and people can put the strategic initiative updates in the issue tracker for this meeting.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that takes us to the end of the agenda. I will stop the stream. Everybody, thanks for anybody who's watching the